Welcome into Rover Sports. How is everybody's Sunday going? I hope that everybody is having a very nice Sunday afternoon here. And today, I wanted to get up a couple videos on college football. See a lot of people kind of previewing the season. A lot of people are talking about college football, and I happen to love college football. I think that it's just Saturdays, the traditions, going to a college football game. It almost beats every other sporting event. I think it even beats the NFL experience in a lot of cases. You just have so much pride. And even Friday nights in a college football town, before the game, the rivalry, the camaraderie, the predictions, the smack talk, it's great. So I wanted to talk today about Coach Orgeron, LSU head coach. Now, if you ask people that are not LSU people, and you were going to poll people on whether they believed in Coach Ed Orgeron at LSU, I bet you would get 9 in 10 people would believe that Coach O would fail. So maybe 90, 85% of the population believes that Coach Ed Orgeron is going to fail. And that is based on a couple of things. One, his record at Ole Miss, I believe, was 3-21. He had a terrible tenure there. Even at USC, he didn't hold that job. And the thing about him as a head coach is that he hasn't had success as a head coach. The second reason why people think he's going to fail is because from an offensive standpoint, he never has addressed nor has a philosophy on offensive football. He last year decided to go get Matt Canada, and I have to admit I do like Coach O going out and getting rid of Canada because he didn't want his tenure to be determined by a guy that he didn't believe in. Like, him and Canada did not see eye to eye. They did not get along. And from a lot of reports, Matt Canada seems like a guy that is very difficult to actually work with. So there was a lot of turmoil internally with Canada and Coach O. So now he brings in a guy that is a Louisiana guy in Steve Ensminger. Now, Ensminger did not do well in his prior stint. I think he did okay with Coach Orgeron, but now both Ensminger and Coach O are going to try to develop this up-tempo play. They're trying to be fast, and I don't even think that's Ensminger's cup of tea. So not a lot of people are believing in Ensminger, and the thing about Coach O and the thing about LSU is Coach O's a defensive line coach. Coach O's a rah-rah guy. We all know that Coach O can try to motivate a bunch of guys to play. Coach O is more about, effort, and does Coach O have the X's and O's to really be an elite-level SEC coach? I mean, you look at the other coaches in the SEC that are very, very good, even in the West. You have Gus Malzahn, that was an unbelievable Arkansas high school football coach, and really Coach Malzahn saved the job of now head coach Chad Morris. So, Chad Morris basically was going to fail his job as the coach of Stevensville High School until he met with Gus Malzahn and learned about the secrets of up-tempo and spread. And Coach Malzahn's kind of mercurial, kind of quiet. He's a very good football coach, pretty good football coach. Nick Saban, of course, the GOAT. Him and Bear Bryant, the best coaches ever in college football. So, you have Saban, and then you have Coach Moorhead, who I really like, and Chad Morris, all in the SEC West. You have guys that are on Orgeron's level. You have Matt Luke. I think a lot of people will put Jimbo Fisher above Coach O, but I'm not the biggest Jimbo believer in the world. So you have Moorhead. You have Auburn, Alabama that I just mentioned. It is the toughest conference in the SEC, the toughest subdivisions, the Mississippi schools, the Alabama schools. You have Texas A&M. So that's 5, and then you have Arkansas that I mentioned. So For Coach O, like if you look at last year, the Troy loss was absolutely horrendous. And this guy has I don't think he has an offensive standpoint. I don't think he can coach quarterback play. I don't think that's his expertise, and he doesn't have an offensive coordinator that's able to do that. When you look at all the elite level head coaches in college football, Nick Saban's a defensive background guy, and he really hasn't developed quarterbacks incredibly well either. But Nick's had some good offensive coordinators. He's had Jimbo. He's had the guy that was the Florida head coach, McElwain. He brought in Dable. But when you have such great offensive line play, and Nick Saban, he even had Kiffin. So Nick Saban is a guy that's willing to learn, and that's what's made Nick great. But you look at guys like Gus Malzahn has the hurry up offense. Gus now has had Chip Lindsey, and got him in the fold, and they've been a pretty good team now with Stidham, and you saw what Nick Marshall had done. You look at Chad Morris, so you look at all the really good coaches, Dan Mullen, Scott Frost, all of them really have offensive expertise, even Kevin Sumlin. So if you're going to be a defensive coach and you're going to be elite like a Paul Chryst, your offense isn't going to be that great. And for LSU, I think that they need to develop quarterback play. It's the one thing that really derailed Les Miles at his time there. Brandon Harris sucked. Zach Mettenberger was marginal with Cam Cameron. They were a team that would run the football into the line of scrimmage, and they would waste talent. They would waste, Odell Beckham. They would waste like Jarvis Landry, like guys that are now in the NFL. And guys that can produce. LSU, I know that they had Fournette. I know that they had Darius Geis, but they've had, a lot of guys that are skill position guys, Jeremy Hill, that have played down there and that really haven't reached their full potential. Really the wide receivers mostly in the quarterback passing game. So they've never really had, tremendous quarterback play. They had Matt Flynn, Jamarcus Russell way back in the day. But you really look at LSU and the tenure with Les Miles, and that's what really screwed them, was not being unable to throw the ball for as long of a time as I can remember. So looking though at the LSU Tigers, last year the Troy loss was terrible. I thought Darius Geis was more of a stable personality, and he played really well in the Ole Miss game, and he did have some flashes. I think that LSU was able to go to Texas A&M, and I think that they won that game. So they finished the season relatively strong. It's just the Troy game was horrible. The Mississippi State game, they absolutely got pummeled by Dan Mullen, and that was after they played really well versus BYU. So the thing about Dave Aranda is he's such a weapon. He's so great for whoever's going to be at LSU, because he's a guy that doesn't have interest in really being a head coach, or he would have already left. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. And the thing about Dave Aranda is, if Joe Oliva and Coach O turn and get fired, will Aranda leave LSU or will he stay there? Because he has an unbelievable fertile recruiting ground of cornerbacks to covet when you talk about LSU. And you talk about Patrick Peterson, Honey Badger. There's so many great cornerbacks. Dante Jackson this year got, put in the NFL draft. Jalen Mills. It's a place where cornerbacks, it really is kind of DBU, even Tre'Davious White. So that's the best part, and that's why Dave Aranda is going to be there. Now, for LSU, if I were LSU, I'd want to try to get Lane Kiffin, but they couldn't get Lane Kiffin. And if I were LSU, I would also look at Bobby Petrino. I think that Petrino, the head athletic director, got pummeled with Rick Pitino and all of the allegations of the whorehouse that were developed there at Louisville. So now Petrino has no safety blanket. The AD is gone from Louisville. No Lamar Jackson there. And I think that Petrino, he's never been a guy to stay in one place too long. You remember him with the Atlanta Falcons and him bouncing. Western Kentucky, he bounced. So Petrino, I think, would make sense for LSU, because then Petrino can utilize the speed on the offensive side of the football and can put in a quarterback that that actually can be successful. I think Petrino had Ryan Mallett. I know he had the Tyler Wilson and I think McFadden, and he's proven that he can coach in the SEC West. He was unbelievable at Arkansas. And if you ask Arkansas people, they would still want Petrino back there if they had their choice. That's how much he was beloved. His offense is really, from a schematic standpoint, his offense is elite. And that's what I think LSU could maybe use is Bobby Petrino. I think he's probably the best coach out there when you look at guys that you can hire, because I'm not sure that Mike Leach, knows about the SEC quite like Petrino does. I mean, Mike Leach is a guy that throws it all over the yard, but I think LSU, I'm not sure that Petrino, that Mike Leach is a guy that honestly can zero in and hone in on games defensively. I don't know. The thing about Washington State, even with Luke Falk, is that they lacked consistency. And that's why I think Petrino would probably be the best move. So for Coach O to prove the doubters wrong, Ed Orgeron is going to have to develop Joe Burrow this year. They're going to have to be able to throw the ball over the yard. And I know that they lost Chark. They lost Russell Gage, I believe, to the NFL. They lose Darius Geis. So they lose some talent on that LSU team. And if I'm going to look at the depth chart of LSU, I want Burrow to win that job. I think Burrow's actually a talented kid. So basically, they have Miles Brennan. I like Lowell Narcisse as a redshirt freshman. I think that he can be good in the following years. But you look at all these receivers are young and haven't really played. I mean, Jonathan Giles, Justin Jefferson, these are guys I haven't really heard of. And I watched LSU a little bit last year. And then from the running back standpoint, it's a lot of guys that you don't necessarily know. It's going to be a completely new group, and then they also lost Will Clapp on the offensive line. So it's a complete remake. ESPN has LSU going about 6 wins this year, and if you're going to go back and look at last year's season, the loss to Troy was so unacceptable. The win at Florida was good, but they barely scraped out that win. The comeback against Auburn was the highlight of the season. And then, listen, LSU, they finished last year 9-3, which isn't terrible, actually. But even against Syracuse, they did not play well. It's the manner in which these games were played. Against Florida, Florida sucks. So, I mean, even they did play well defensively. It was a great, valiant effort to go to the Swamp and win, and that's when Florida was competitive. Beating Ole Miss, again, Ole Miss had all the sanctions, and they boat raced them. Arkansas was dead in the water with Bielema. The SEC West was so down last year with Mississippi and all of Matt Luke's first year. Tennessee, you got in the crossover game. And then you had Florida, that your yearly rival, which is going to be a lot better now with Coach Mullen there. Arkansas was horrible, and you're going to have to go to Arkansas this year. And then you look at Auburn, that was a great game, but also that was mostly due to special teams and the ineptitude of Gus Malzahn. Auburn really had that football game, and it was more about Auburn losing that game than it was about LSU winning that football game. So if we're going to look at LSU's schedule coming up in the 2018, the first game's going to be great. It's going to be Miami. Now, LSU, they played incredible in the Sugar Dome versus BYU. I don't think that BYU crossed midfield. Now, BYU last year with Tanner Mangum, they ended up being completely horrific on the offensive side of the ball. So even though LSU, their conditioning looked fantastic and they looked like they were playing at a whole nother level, BYU sucked. So that Miami game's going to be good. I think Miami and Mark Richt, I think Mark Richt is so overrated as a head coach. He's always a bridesmaid. He's the Andy Reid of college football. And last year, Miami was lucky to win the games that they won. And then, of course, they shat the bed against Pittsburgh. So Miami, an overrated pile of shit. last year. And basically, I believe that LSU has a decent chance if Burrow plays well, they can win that game. They'll have more fans there in Dallas. That'll be a nice way to start the season. They then have some southeastern Louisiana, like middle school football team they play then. But then they go to... they're going to go to Auburn. That's going to be a dead loss. That's a 3:30 game. If they win that, if they beat Miami, they're going to get pummeled by Auburn. Stidham's back defensively with Kevin Steele. Auburn is going to boat race LSU. So if Miami beats LSU, Coach O might just get fired after that Auburn game. I mean, we remember Les Miles, he got fired after the Auburn game a couple of years ago. It could be the exact same thing with Coach O. Then if somehow they beat Miami, though, they'll be 2-1, and then you compete against Auburn and try not to get absolutely freaking killed and murdered. Then you have Louisiana Tech. That's going to be a win. You have Ole Miss again with Phil Lonzo and Jordan Tamu. Your defense needs to play well. Ole Miss has zero defense. You need to win that football game. Period. End of story. So you need to start off the season. If you're you need to be 4-1. Then you go to Florida. I believe you lose that game. You go to 4-2. You then play Georgia at home. And you have 3 consecutive weeks. This is your hell week right here. This is your biggest stretch of the year, is Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi State. I think you lose to Florida with Dan Mullen. I think Mullen wins that game there at Florida. Georgia, you play at home, and your defense might play well if it's Jake Fromm, but I would doubt that you guys would win that football game. Georgia's defense should still be pretty good, and then Mississippi State, you can maybe win that game. If you're Coach O, if you somehow are at the bye week and you only have 2 losses, that's looking incredible. But the way that I see it, I see LSU, honestly, before the bye week, how many games you got? You got 4, you have 8. I see them at 5-3. Then Alabama, that's a dead loss at home, even off of the bye week, 5-4. You go to Arkansas, that could be a loss. And then you're at A&M, so you're looking at a season of 6-6. You're looking at maybe a 6-6 season, 7-5. You have all these toss-up games if you're LSU. So it is a brutal schedule. And really the manner in which they play these games. I'm really curious to see how they play against Auburn on the road, how they go to Arkansas and play, how they play, though, against Florida, how the quarterback can play. Georgia is a game, actually, that LSU fans are going to be jacked up for. And if you're still competing at that stage, I think you can keep it close. You have Georgia and Alabama at home. The great news about this season is that for Coach O, we are going to see if Coach O is a guy that can handle the SEC, because he has the gauntlet this year. He has Miami. He goes on the road to Auburn. He goes to Florida this year. Georgia, the toughest game you're going to see in the crossover matchup, comes to LSU, and Alabama comes. So you're playing Kirby, you're playing Jimbo, you're playing everybody, and Dan Mullen as well. So for LSU, this is going to be the ultimate year for Coach O. If Coach O can win this year, if he can shock the world with Ensminger, I think Coach O is gone after this year. I see Coach O honestly losing to Georgia, to Florida, to Auburn. I see him losing Alabama. I see them losing at A&M. Arkansas, I believe, is a loss, so I already have 5 losses probably, so let me mark down the losses here. Let me try to find 6 losses. Auburn's a loss, Florida, Georgia's a loss, so you have 3 losses. Alabama's 4, and Texas A&M is 5. And then I'm going to also think Arkansas is going to beat them as well. So I have LSU there, probably losing 6 football games for the following season. There's no offensive people coming back. Steve Ensminger, I don't believe can coach offensive football. And as much as I'm rooting for Coach O, because Coach O's a wonderful human being, wonderful person, great guy, has persevered. This is his dream job, a guy you want to see succeed, a guy that everybody hates. Unfortunately, Coach O does have those shortcomings in terms of teaching terminology of offensive football, and he is a CEO, and I don't think he is a head football coach in the SEC, especially at a place with the expectations of Louisiana State. So there you go. 20 minutes on LSU, on Coach Orgeron, and the LSU Tigers. LSU fans, what do you think this season is going to be like with Coach O? And I listed my fears for LSU in this video. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. Have a wonderful,